And today we are very honored to have 3 of the participating artists of the women exhibitions, as well as the curator of the women exhibitions joining us for the artist talk. We also invite Denise Tang from the Department of Cultural Study in Leung University as the respondent of the artist presentation. So we are now working in Hong Kong time morning, San Francisco Bay Area, early evening, and myself in New York, that is 10 p.m. So we are pretty good, yeah. Right, I think we can start. Okay, once again, good morning, good evening, everybody. My name is Kalen Lee. I am the moderator of the artist talk, the first artist talk of the women's exhibition, From Her to Here. We also have Leung from the Chinese Culture Center, San Francisco, to be the co-moderator of this session. A bit of housekeeping first. The artist talk will be recorded and archived for public access after this live session. So if you do have any concern or question, we would like you to feel free to ask any question, but this will be recorded. So in case you do have any question regarding your digital appearance or digital footprint on the internet, please let us know. You can write to us, or while you ask your question, you can let us know. But just want everybody to know that the session will be recorded and archived for the sustainability of the project, as well as for public access. So welcome all to the Artist Talk series of the Women Exhibition, From Her to Here. Today we're going to focus on queer futurity with artists and curator across the USA and Asia. The Women Exhibition currently at the WMA space is a collaboration with the Chinese Culture Center San Francisco, CCCSF. The exhibition is conceived by Abby Chan, formerly the curator at CCCSF and now the head of contemporary art at the Asian Art Museum, San Francisco. The exhibition aims at addressing feminism and queerness in the Asian and the Chinese context. At WMA Space, we present a version of the exhibition as phase 1, followed by an incubation program in Hong Kong on pre-matter and queer development in Hong Kong as phase 2. So please stay tuned. Today, we are honored to have 3 of the participating artists and the curator of the exhibition joining us for the dialogue on the future of queer. In particular, in the Pan-Asian or inter-Asian context. So first of all, I would like to introduce the 3 artists, as well as the respondent and the moderator, and then I will hand it to the first artist to present her or their work. First, Tina Takemoto from San Francisco. Hello, Titi. Titi is a queer Japanese Asian artist and scholar exploring Asian American history, sexuality, and identity. Not only does her film, arts project, and researches exhibit and published internationally, Titi also served on the board of the Queer Cultural Center and is a co-founder of Queer Conversations on Culture and the Arts. Titi is the Dean of Humanities and Science at California College of the Arts in San Francisco. And then next we have Madeleine Lim from San Francisco. Hello, Madeleine. Madeleine is the founding executive cum artistic director of Queer Women of Color Media Arts Project, an award-winning filmmaker with over 25 years of experience as producer, director, cinematographer, and editor as well. Her works are shown at international film festivals, including Vancouver International Film Festival, Mill Valley Film Festival, and Amsterdam Anna Street International Film Festival. The film that she shows in the exhibition and today, Sambal Balachan in San Francisco, 1997, will remain banned in Singapore as of today. And then we have Heesoo Kwon from San Francisco, originally from Seoul, is a visual artist and anthropologist. She received her MFA with Alan D'Souza at the art department, UC Berkeley. Her works have been exhibited internationally, and she's the finalist of the Queer Art Prize, host at the Whitney, New York, and SECA Art Award for artists working in the Bay Area, host in SF MoMA. She's currently an artist in residence at CCCSF. Hello, Heesoo, and congratulations. And we also have invited respondent, Denise Tang. Denise is an associate professor in the Department of Cultural Study and associate dean in teaching and learning at Leung University, Hong Kong. Her research specializes in gender and sexuality with specific focus on lesbian desire and transgender masculinity in an inter-Asian context. Tang was a program manager and HIV testing counselor for communities, including Asian and Pacific Islander LGBTQI+, and youth in San Francisco, Seattle, and Vancouver, BC before Hong Kong. And last but not least, Hoi Leung. Hi, Hoi. Hoi Leung is a Hong Kong-born, San Francisco-Bay curator with a deep sensitivity to neighborhood dynamics in her curatorial approach. As the Chinese Cultural Center curator, she oversees project, exhibition, public art intervention, and community-based project. Her recent project with Kathy Liu, Interior Garden, a major solar exhibition of large-scale ceramic-based installation, explore the dream and dystopian state of Asian America. So you can see we have a big group lined up, all highly specialized and highly regarded and in their own career, and all women. I'm so happy to be here. So shall we invite TT to present her work, and let's give a virtual applause to TT using the, can you use icon? No, then just show your hands. Yeah, thank you, TT. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to share my screen. Just maybe someone can give me a thumbs up if you can see it. See it okay? Yep, okay, great. Thanks so much. Okay, so thank you so much for inviting me to join this conversation. Today, I will focus on two films engaging with the hidden dimensions of queer Asian American history that were inspired by Asian Americans who left subtle yet discernible traces of their same-sex intimacy in the archive. My work attempts to reanimate queer history through modes of speculation and embodiment that emphasize the sensory and emotional qualities of remembrance. This work reflects my desire to connect to queer ancestors, as well as the impossibility of fully restoring their stories. So I'm going to begin by showing a short clip from Looking for Jiro.
No time to hesitate.
Okay, so this film was inspired by the archival collection of Jiro Onuma, one of the few known adult gay men who were incarcerated by the US government during World War II. In this drag king performance, Jiro's character is caught in a state of longing and desire, where time goes by so slowly when you're awaiting a lover who will never arrive. The US war propaganda footage showing hardworking Japanese Americans was intended to market them as a reliable labor force for American factory work. But in the world of this performance, Jiro's character also refuses this labor. Through his acts of homoerotic bread making, Jiro can dream of bodybuilders and fist his way towards being and becoming his own muscular fantasy. And now I'm going to show most of Ever Wanting for Margaret Chung, which is currently playing at the WMA. So this film was inspired by the complicated queer life of Margaret Chung, San Francisco's first Chinese-American female physician. Known as Mike during her college years, Chung was obsessed with aviation and the military. Although closeted throughout her life, Chung had intimate relationships with female poets, entertainers, and celebrities. So this film is an attempt to envision her euphoria, despair, and insatiable desire for women, fame, and belonging through her various forays into drugs, sapphic surgeries, and queer flights of fancy. Thank you.
Thank you, TT. Fascinating. Yeah. Without seeing your work, and also your work as a way to visualize some biographical and very interesting persona individual from San Francisco and the Bay Area. Is really, really fascinating to know all these history, personal history from your work. Thank you so much. And next, I would like to invite Madeleine to talk and also show her work to all of us. So Madeleine, please.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for the invitation to participate in the Artist Talk. I am delighted to be here. If you can't hear me or can't see me, just holler. Let's see. I wanted to talk just a little bit about Sambal Belacan in San Francisco, which is currently screening at WMA. And as Kalen, is that how you pronounce your name, Kalen? Mentioned earlier, Sambal Belacan in San Francisco was created and completed in 1997. That's 24 years ago. And promptly banned by the Singapore government. I'm originally from Singapore. So Sambal Belacan in San Francisco is about 3 immigrant queer women, queer Singaporeans, who are grappling with making a home in San Francisco. And so it's about, they're moving to San Francisco, to a new country, and trying to create a sense of belonging and home. And I really wanted the title, Sambal Belacan in San Francisco, to really reflect that contradiction. Sambal Belacan is the name of a spicy shrimp chili sauce. And it's not generally associated with San Francisco. And so I wanted it to sort of, give a little bit of that sense of the juxtaposition of the cultures and the space. I can share a little bit of Sambal Belacan in San Francisco, if that's helpful, but that can be viewed at the exhibit. I just want to show this one section. So I'm going to share my screen. And if you can't hear anything, please let me know.
No choice I make is like free and clear. Like if I choose to stay here, I have to give up my family and my whole country, the culture that I know. Choosing to go back to Singapore would, for me, definitely mean some sort of sacrificing of my own self, which would be my sexuality, like either denial or suppression or having to lie about it. I'm just, I think, really struggling with the fact that every choice is a denial of something of myself. Whether or not people get shocked by the kind of so-called choices you make, it really depends on like where they're standing and how much closer to the mainstream they are. I think the more close to the mainstream you are, the harder it is for you to understand why someone would choose to put themselves on the outside. It is my 2 hands that will love you, heal you, stroke, rub, tease, and please you, till you know with all your being that they will start the revolution.
I'm on my own.
So that was, I wanted to create a documentary that was not your traditional talking head documentary. And so in Samba Belacan in San Francisco, we never actually see, there are 3 interviewees, we never actually see them sit and talk and answer questions in that way. We really just see them going about their daily activities, whether they might be folding laundry or flossing their teeth, very intimate, personal types of things. And that scene, that bed scene there was, really wanting to convey queer women and sexuality and getting that into the documentary. And because that's the key reason for leaving Singapore, right? For all 3 interviewees. And so I wanted to include the bed scene in a way where typically when we see 2 women in film, it's generally for the male gaze and it's for male consumption, particularly heterosexual male consumption. And so that moment when the 2 interviewees turn, or the 2 protagonists turn and look into the camera, it's really about, okay, if you were just, sort of being a voyeur, you were, they looked back at you being the voyeur, and to really interrogate that moment, right? Okay, we just, saw 2 people touching and, sort of semi-naked, and, they turned and looked back at us. They were aware of what was happening. So that was a big piece. And probably also one of the reasons that the film was banned, definitely for the homosexual content as defined by the Singaporean government. My next film after that was completed in 2013, and it was called The Worlds of Bernice Bing. And here I wanted to really shine a light on an artist. Bernice Bing was an abstract expressionist artist. She was part of the Beat movement, and Yeeban Korn was one of her instructors, art instructors in New York. And really, it was about how, as a Chinese American lesbian who is really good at what she did, which was her art, why is it that she's not more well known? Why is she not as well known as, some of the other folks of that period, like Joan Brown, or, even her instructors? And so that talks about her challenges as a woman artist, and and because she's queer, she doesn't have an in into some of those, many of the other women artists were married to male artists, right? And so they had an in into that world, and Bernice did not. And so that documentary was much more, and Bernice Bing had already passed away. And so that documentary was really about interviewing folks who knew her, other artists who are celebrities in their own right, who knew Bernice Bing, and talking about her and her work and the impact of her work. Let me share just a trailer of that.
Bernice was an abstract expressionist painter.
When she showed me her paintings, I heard sound and I saw light.
She graduated from the San Francisco Art Institute, and she emerged with a bang.
I think her work stands out because of the way that it bridges East and West.
It's a crime that her work wasn't recognized in the same way that others were.
This is what happens to a woman artist, an artist of color, a lesbian, that she gets filtered out of history, that her accomplishments are not noted, that they are not remembered.
Bernice changed the world. She really changed the world.
So that's a trailer for The Worlds of Bernice Bing. And I really wanted the documentary to do justice to her painting and to her art. And so, there was a lot of her art that was included, and she was a huge jazz, she really appreciated jazz. And so part of the entire score, the entire music score is by Anthony Brown, who's an Asian American musician here in the Bay Area. And so, we included as much of his jazz compositions in it as well. And then the current documentary that I am working on is my first feature-length documentary, and it's about Jewel Gomez, who is also an artist. She is an acclaimed award-winning writer, playwright, and activist. So it's about her life and legacy, her art and activism. And she is alive, which is awesome. And it's really, I really wanted, after Bernice Bing, and, Bernice Bing passed away in the 90s. And I really wanted to highlight particularly queer women of color artists in our community before they passed away, and not wait until, especially as an artist, right? For someone to pass away, and then because they're no longer with us, actually valuing their work. And so I really wanted to, sort of change the perspective on that and really look at an artist's legacy and work and value it and give them their flowers while they're still alive, so to speak. And that is in post-production right now. And I can share a 90-second trailer to that.
Great to have Jewel Gomez back in the house, an award-winning author, poet, playwright, celebrating the expanded 25th anniversary edition of the Gilda Stories.
Jewel the great storyteller. Jewel the great truth teller.
The way she holds herself and the way she writes from her truth.
The Gilda Stories pushed the boundaries of what had been in print before. Why hadn't it not occurred to anybody that the perfect vampire would be a black lesbian?
Her work is important for bringing historical figures who were queer to the present and to a whole new generation of audiences.
Fictionalizing, humanizing, filling those gaps in the historical record with imagination, but imagination through a lens of the experience of living in the world as a queer person of color.
You have to be able to imagine a better world to get to a better world, which is why I love writing.
So that's a teaser to Jewel, and we are in post-production on that right now, and we hope to be locking picture and sound next week, fingers crossed. And I really, I think for my body of work as an artist, it's really to put a face to issues, whether those issues might be queer migration and queer diaspora, creating a sense of belonging and community, and what are some of those traditions, especially from, people of color who are queer. How are we queer within our cultural context, right? And and the issues, the challenges that Bernice Bing went through as an artist, and how do you thrive? How do you make a livelihood as an artist, create your art and be able to have a life, and similar to Jewel, right? As a writer, as a playwright, how do you not just have a day job and then do your art on the side, but how do you bring those things together, the things that matter to us, the things that that drive us, right, that we're passionate about. And so primarily that's sort of what's behind my films. Thank you.
Thank you, Madeleine. Yeah, it's so beautiful for you and TT to bring all these beautiful life story. And also, it's not just about underrepresentation. I think the way you research, you to study a particular individual, and through your art, whether it's film or installations or archival material, to bring life to it, to us as audience. And also we know so little about our own history, about our own community, and with all this story, we are able to not just to understand ourselves better, but also to project a bit on the future. Where can we go? What can we do? Blah blah blah. Yeah. So thank you so much. It's so beautiful. Yeah. And finally, we have Heesoo. Hello. Can you see that? Yeah. Heesoo gave this to me during the studio visit. And, yeah. Whenever I go, it sticks with me. So yeah. Yeah. It's an interview with Alan. So I really treasure this. Thank you. And the floor is yours. So please, yes.
Thank you. Hi. I'm so honored and excited to be here and share my work with you guys here. And I think I can start with some short video of my overall practice. So let me share my screen. Okay. Hi, my name is Heesoo Kwon. I'm a visual artist, and most of my works are related to Leung, autobiographical feminist religion I initiated in 2017 when I was the first year MFA at Berkeley. Till now, almost 100 people converted to Leung. Oh my God! I will say I'm the initiator because it's a provider, but I want people to initiate their own version. I studied my female ancestors' photos and videos, and I made 3D models of them. The way how I'm working on my family history and my own history with digital medium, like 3D modeling or 3D scanning, or like creating like 3D animated video or 3D games. Yeah. How I build my own digital utopia, a feminist utopia, where my ancestors in Korea, some ancestors who passed away already, and me in the US now. I'm going back and forth between Korea and the US, but now I'm in access right now. Like, and also like there's some community members in Bay Area or like different states right now or different countries. So the way how I'm building the digital utopia is like building some like my own utopia where I can get along with all the people I know and all the people whom I want to invite without any limit of time and space, including my ancestors who passed away already too.
Have your ancestors with you. The figures are molten, their skins reveal their green insides. And I know that you've also said that the word for molting in Korean is the same as the word to break from tradition.
Yeah.
What role does transformation have in women's lives?
The transformation I wanted for my female ancestors' life didn't happen. Half of the characters, my ancestors, passed away already. And only my mom and my grandma from mother's side are alive. My goal in linguism, like my personal linguism, is I really want to make my ancestors as queer body, like by creating this kind of videos and games a lot. And like I want to pursue this kind of ritual like as much as I can. And when I feel they're queer, right? If I feel like now I can, like now I'm ready, then I want to redefine myself as queer too. But I just feel like I want to invite my ancestors or encourage my ancestors to be free first. I feel like that's my job.
Yeah, so most of so I talked about it in the video, but I'm the initiator of an autobiographical feminist religion called Leung. And as an initiator, I'm conducting my personal rituals for my female ancestor sites, and also I'm organizing and leading communal activities with the community members. So I'm kind of like bridging the communities and my family in Korea in the digital utopia. And for the show in Hong Kong, I showed a short clip about my mom. Actually, let me, yeah, yeah. But it's the main work I had for CCC was this piece. So the installation was 2 channel videos in SF, and one channel is in Hong Kong right now. And but this piece is called Leung Bridge, and I 3D scanned and digitized the neighborhood of Chinatown where the gallery is located, and kind of transformed it as part of my digital utopia. And I had my female ancestors together, so we are kind of like honoring the like having some ritual, honoring our lives and the neighborhood, and kind of like welcoming, yeah, the new part of the universe. So 3D scanning and 3D modeling is some kind of shamanistic tool for me, for my ritual. And I imagine myself as a shaman too, like connecting my utopian world and the reality where my body, the actual body, is located in. And yeah, and one of my current work I had recently is this work. This is called, the title of this work is Leung is Holding Us, and it's I made this video for my solo exhibition in Canada, and it was my first time to produce some video work, including some specific site which I never been before. So it was really challenging, but I could find some connection between me and the city through the interaction with the director of the gallery. And I studied about the neighborhood too, and kind of like reimagine the city and kind of transformed it as part of Leung's digital space too. Yes, think, and I'm not sure how much time I have. Maybe like I can share more in Q&A section. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Heesoo. Yeah. I really enjoyed the 3 artists talk and how they progress from TT, especially how we think about the history and timeline as well. The modern, the contemporary, the future, the archival material, oral history, documentary, and the 3D scanning, the digital artifact. I hope it makes sense to the audience. And Hoi, do you have anything that you would like to quickly respond to before we hand it to Denise?
I have to say, just revisiting some of the work, I think both in preparation for the Hong Kong iteration and just now, just viewing some of the work in full, it's quite amazing how much ground we covered in the exhibition. I think that was the really to imagine that bandwidth and that capacity of how much we can push, you know, like a queer narrative or even towards a narrative of San Francisco. I think it's a really special project for me to work on.
Thank you. Yeah. So Denise, how are you?
Hello. Hi, Kalen.
Hello. Yeah. So we invite you to be the respondent of the artist talk. So after the 3 artist talks, do you have any insight or anything in particular that you would like to share to us?
Sure. Actually, I would really like to share some of my thoughts, on actually watching the virtual exhibit through WNA. And also, I'm really delighted to be able to watch some of the newer works here and some of the works I haven't seen actually, in the exhibit at all. I actually feel very honored and privileged to be able to see these works in the context of in Hong Kong, actually, even though we're doing Zoom now, but the fact that hopefully the gallery space will be opening up and more people can see it, and actually the feeling of seeing it in Hong Kong will be quite different, I think. Especially it's so hard to get an exhibit of queer women's artists. I know we also have artists who identify as non-binary, and also there's also a guy in the artwork in the exhibit too. So, but it's good to see these kind of artwork in Hong Kong, which I think it's definitely we need to have more of that. So let me start off with really thinking about these art, that we are talking about today. I want to build the connections between the artwork of TT, Madeleine, and Heesoo together, and extending to the work of other artists in this show, Woman, a Woman, from her to here. And let me begin with Madeleine Lim's groundbreaking mixed genre film, Samba Balachan in San Francisco, 1997, released. Now, as what Madeleine said, the film featured interviews with 3 Asian lesbians, more specifically members from Sambao, which is the Malaysian Singapore Asian lesbian group. They talked about connections and disconnections to home, to their culture, and to their families. So the message of leaving Singapore just to be who I am was delivered through multiple iterations. And so was the need to feel connected after being away from home, hence the Sambao Balachan. These diasporic feelings and questions about home and belonging, as this exhibit really shows, sets out to map and capture, were no longer foreign to most of us living here in Hong Kong. As a queer scholar now based in Hong Kong, but having been active in the West Coast Asian lesbian scene back in the 90s, which actually I met you, Madeleine, a long time ago. Lim's film actually reminded me of the feelings in longing for life free of restraints and a community in a foreign place, which brought me to actually TT's film, Ever Wanting, for Margaret Chung, an experimentally sharp film that depicts women's bodies in juxtaposition with fighter jets and images of war, patriotism, and surgical procedures. It wasn't until I had a chance to learn of Margaret Chung through this video that I connect the dots between these images. The story of the first Chinese-American physician who was known for being masculine in wardrobe, for being very generous in hospitality, and her dangerous liaisons with women, sets the background for a San Francisco that already has a reputation for being ruly and rowdy, queer and subcultural. Ever Wanting give us really a mixed collage of images where whiteness meets Orientalism, race intersects with sexuality, as we revises white American history through the larger-than-life character of Margaret Chung. So when I looked at these two, films together, I think about women in the queer Asian lesbian group Sambao held monthly potlucks. Margaret Chung also held dinners, lavish dinners. Even though they're very different in history and time, in scale and purpose, You wonder about the conversations that could have taken place across time. If there was a time machine of any imagination, what would bring us all together? Would it be our sexualities? Would it be our racialized identities, or our need to find acceptance to establish maybe a peculiar form of personhood, or our fierceness, in defying social death, confronting racism and patriarchy? Or would they talk about, their sexual desires, the heartbreaks, and where we would call home? Perhaps Heesoo's utopian, the museum can take in all these conflicting feelings and projects us into the future. Here we arrive at a queer future, where futurity is an empty concept to begin with. I watch the naked avatar walking in confident strides to the beat with splashing bubbles and a constant smile. And sometimes the smile is sinister also. And I imagined of a queer utopia. I'm trying to imagine what the future will hold for people like us, using a 90s term in Singaporean context, people like us. Are we in the future where the future is already here? People ask this question all the time now in the city I live in, Hong Kong. In my own recent ethnographic research with older lesbians and bisexual women in Hong Kong, Singapore, and Taiwan, the future looked actually quite dismal at times, but also wide open at other times. I started exploring the notion of being an independent and modern woman through the oral histories of older Chinese women with same-sex desires. I actually want to find out the intersecting factors and cross relations between one's sexuality, same-sex desire, family, and gender role in the way subjects formations are being formed of being a lesbian or bisexual woman. I actually try to look at the historical constitutive elements of same-sex sexuality and its attendant social practices through the oral histories, through them telling me very precious stories, which I'm very privileged to be able to hear. So how is history folded into one's opening up of sexuality and gendered performance? As we can imagine, there are very few people, which I'm always surprised that there are very few qualitative studies on sexual subjectivities of older Chinese women in general. Or older women are not often included in studies, even in elder sexuality. Traditional Chinese gender roles, of course, position women as often subservient to men, and Confucian emphasis on women's loyalty and obedience at home always devalue them in society. Confucian beliefs run very deeply in Hong Kong, Korea, Singapore, and Taiwan. It actually hurts me to think of Sambal Balachan in San Francisco being given an R21 classification in 2020 by the Singaporean government and could only be shown to a small audience of 33 people, including your mom, Madeleine's mother, in the audience. It pulls me right back from any kind of utopian imagination to a very dystopian reality. It's not surprising as the latest global events and the pandemic have really heightened all this attention on how we feel collectively. The ongoing COVID pandemic and all the variants now we experience it have put most parts of the world on hold and really conjured up a wide array of cultural imaginations on the end of the world. So to put dystopia into context, Hong Kong has long collected all these global imaginations of the end of the world through a lot of science fiction, cyberpunk, and perhaps sometimes very problematic representation in Hollywood films, all the way, from the Blade Runner to Pacific Rim to Ghost in the Shell. But local dystopian fiction and films are also in circulation, including the low-budget independent omnibus film 10 Years Sublead, capturing and expanding dystopic emotions to nearby Asia. So to wrap up, I think for Hoy, to create this exhibit, Woman in Hong Kong, and to include queer artists based in the US, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, there must have been certain meanings attached to what you're saying, our queer state of mind. Chen Hon-sing and also Huang Mengwen got us thinking about the past in order to look forward to the queer future. Nicole Pun, a local Hong Kong artist, draws our attention to the bending of fingers, the curling of a fist, and a crease in the arm. If there is a queer futurity, it must be in resonance with what cultural studies scholar Audrey Yu would suggest, a form of queer resilience, which this is why we're all here, I think, is we're being resilient enough, to be around. Audrey Yu's concept of queer resilience, and I quote, as evolutionary, an alternative discourse, and a form of resource, is what these films, single channel video installations or double channel video installations, archival prints and mixed media artwork, were all telling us to be here, to be resilient. So thank you for really sharing your work, with us.
Thank you, Denise. It's so beautifully written. I mean, saying, yeah. Thank you so much. So I think while we are, I think we can do it in twofold. So if any artist and Hoy and Denise would like to have a quick chat about what happened in the past hour, feel free to. At the same time, we have 22 attendees here. So from your screen name, I can tell, some of you are photographer, aspiring filmmaker, aspiring performance artist, very experienced photographer, film study scholar, etc. and etc. So, so if you do have any question, feel free to use the chat box to say what you want to ask, and I will help to verbalize it. Yeah, verbalize your question. I mean, yeah. So while we are waiting, expecting question, any question we have from the panel? Yeah.
I have a question.
Please. Yeah.
I have a question about each of you, actually. Maybe I can start with TT first, if I may. So I want to know how you find, how did you embark on this journey to find this history, especially, you had to find, I'm so glad I get to watch Juro, here. When I watch the film, and then I think about Margaret Chung, right? Male bodies, female bodies, and all that. But how did you start your journey finding them? Now that's a question for TT, and if I may, can I continue ask a question for Madeleine as well. And I think what was interesting is you said the title, Sambal Balachang, is something you try to find that is not associated with San Francisco. So how would you say what is associated with San Francisco now? After being an activist for so long, a filmmaker for so long, So what would you, if you had to make, a film now with people in Sambal Balachang in San Francisco again, how would you envision that being made, And maybe for also for Heesoo, is when you talked about utopia, it's something that you imagine in the future, right? So it's always in relation to the life you're living now. So can you tell us a little bit, about how you came up with this utopian kind of concept, to use it as such a dominant focus in your work, right? Okay, I'll shut up now.
Okay, I'll be brief. So for Looking for Juro, I was actually invited by another artist who was an artist in residence at the GLBT Historical Society in San Francisco. And they put together a project that they thought of as matchmaking, where they found personal archives of not very well-known queer folks who had passed away, and coupled those archival collections with living artists, poets, musicians. So I was introduced to Juro Onuma that way. And at the time, his collection was represented one of the few Asian American voices in that collection. Since then, it's really been amplified quite a bit. And then since then, I have the great fortune of knowing lots of queer historians who point me in directions, including my partner, Amy Sueyoshi, who's a queer historian. And then sometimes I'll be presenting work, and then someone from the audience will come up to me and say, you need to work on so-and-so, and then they'll point me in another direction. So those are some of the ways. Thank you for that question.
Hi, Denise. I don't remember you visually, but your name sounds really familiar. So Yeah. Thank you for your question. And, I think it's really interesting to look back and to look at our group of Sambal folks, 25 years later almost, because most of it was filmed in 1996. And everyone's still here in San Francisco or in the Bay Area. They may have moved out of San Francisco, but they're in the Bay Area, and everyone is, everyone's older, 25 years older, and established in careers or families or raising kids, being parents, and obviously making trips back and forth between, the US and Singapore and Malaysia, particularly, taking care of elderly parents who may still be in Singapore or Malaysia. And so, we are still in touch with each other. And when I made Sambal Belacan in San Francisco back then, it was really not about that the grass is greener in the United States at all, right? It's like, wherever you go, there are the sets of issues that you have to deal with. And I think that with all of the activism that a lot of us in the Sambal group have been doing here, and speaking for myself, not to speak for anyone else, it definitely feels like San Francisco is truly home. Just for myself, I've spent more years here than in Singapore at this point. And with all of, what, in terms of running QuackMap, starting QuackMap, running QuackMap, and, QuackMap is now over 20 years old, and the legacy that I'm hoping that QuackMap will the impact and legacy that it will have, which is really, training queer women of color, queer and trans people of color, filmmakers, giving them skills. We do filmmaking workshops for free in the community here. We present an annual film festival that's free as well. So it's really building that community of voices, right, in terms of increasing our representation, and in terms of increasing filmmakers in our communities that can then, share our stories and share our experiences. So it's very much focused on that piece now, along with my own art making, but it's really focused about bringing, the community up in terms of filmmaking skills and telling our stories and representing ourselves. And it's not about waiting for Hollywood to catch up, which is really important. I think it's really important to make sure that, we are in front of the camera in Hollywood films, and behind the camera, and the showrunners and the writers and the producers and all of that. And I think it's really important that we have a seat at those tables. And I think it's also equally important that we build our own tables and chairs in our own rooms, and create our own work as well. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Hi, thank you so much for the question. And I think I didn't share it in my presentation, but I started my career as an artist after finishing my degree in business in college. So, and my family was really sincere Catholic. So the reason why I became an artist and started to make work is kind of like to reimagine my reality and family history, because I found myself reproducing so much misogynist violence and patriarchal violence that I just learned from the business field, and kind of monetizing the female body and the shamefulness, kind of triggering all the traumas and to earn the money. So I started art after I realized that and quit my job. So that was really important turning point in my career and the motivation to be an artist. So I think from the beginning, my art was all about kind of utopian world, and something that I don't have right now. And all the community I had in Korea was everyone was just business major and really sincere Catholic, and everyone told me I'm kind of questioning the tradition, why I'm kind of messing up the tradition, and questioning all the things that I shouldn't touch with. So yeah, I think it was one of the important inspiration for me as an as an artist, and also mostly like one of the important part of Lamism is my ancestors, and I started to work on Lamism after they passed away already, and after I moved to the US, so I didn't have chance to interact with them in person. And yeah, so I really wanted to reimagine their lives, and I wanted to reimagine my relationship with them, but it was impossible. So I started to dream about some kind of utopian dream, like yeah, with their second lives. Yeah, so that's why I think I started to work on this, the utopian concept.
Thank you, Heesoo. And I may see a question from the floor. So if anybody do have question, feel free to ask. While we, yeah, actually the compliment, you know, the works are inspiring. Thank you, Kit. Yeah, I think the work, the artist, I don't want to do this, but it's such a good lineup tonight, and they're all amazing. We are all amazing people and amazing work. But this exhibition, as the latest iteration of women exhibition, is staged in the world now that is very different from that than in 2011 for women and queer community. I'm curious what connections, changes, or perspective do you speak to address and emphasize currently through showing your work? Yeah. So there's a question from Kit that brings us to the sort of the cycle and the changes of the show, maybe from the past 10 years. So anybody would like to share your experience about the changes and that may or may not happen? Yeah.
I want to chime in, but I know I will toss this to Madeleine too, because there's a little overlapping, right? But really the woman platform, when it was conceived, was really to look at feminist and queer communities in China in particular. And that in and of itself is a very bold and kind of strong move, and a very resistant move. And for it to arrive to San Francisco and beyond, and for it to become an ongoing platform at the Chinese Culture Center, it's really a statement towards that, hey, we are building the space to imagine something otherwise, you know, whatever that otherwise might be. And so by the time it came to the, you know, to this iteration, and it was conceived of just a little bit before COVID, but then it was mainly worked through COVID, and the show had been delayed at that point. And kind of given, I think in a way that, like, first and foremost, I'm an immigrant, right? So, and maybe secondary, I'm a weirdo, and then tertiary, I would consider myself a queer person. So with that sort of framework, I was very, very dead set on addressing the energies and the atmosphere of queerness, while being very place specific, which is where CCC is located, which is in San Francisco's Chinatown. How are we addressing an immigrant and also a diaspora community around feelings of queerness, became the emerging subject matter. But I think the activism of it all is still very much the same. While the subject matter, while we're still dealing with gender and sexuality, the subject matter is vastly different, and could be on kind of different ends of the spectrum, right? It comes from visibility, representation, and now it's in a way that it's going, it addresses that, but it's also in a way that it's not reactive but proactive. You know, where do we go from here? And so that is really the energy that I wanted to kind of take this series that was originally put together by Abby, and kind of put my own spin on it in a way. Yeah, but Madeleine, because you were there.
Well, just to add very quickly that, you know, back 10 years ago, Abby came and we met and we talked. And when that woman exhibit started, it was, if I remember correctly, it was primarily focused on China. And so there were a couple of artists who had come from Shanghai and they visited San Francisco and they came to our QuackMap office. And we spent a day or more with them and talking with them and looking at, how they were mapping out the different art spaces and how they were hoping to get the word out in Shanghai and to other places within China. And we shared about about film and the work that we were doing in community. And so it was a really great conversation. And from my understanding, I think it kind of started, this larger documentary from the Shanghai women into creating their feature-length documentary, if I remember correctly. But yeah, so I think what's really significant for me is that in terms of how Hoy took that curatorial theme and it's still relevant 10 years later, it's still relevant in terms of looking at women and our sexuality and our queerness and bodies and all of the things that are tied to that.
Yeah, I agree. And also on Thursday at the University of Hong Kong Department of Art History, where I attend, there will be a talk that bring in Abby's work back in 2011 as a content by, let me see. Well, I will share the poster at the end of it. So there's also a momentum for us to look at all this work about queer feminism, Chinese, Pan-Asian context here in Hong Kong now, which is great. Yeah, we have two more questions. I think we can combine it for TT and also Heesoo. So I'm going to say the question, and TT and Heesoo feel free to answer the question the way you want. So Madeleine just mentioned about queer community, and I can feel the power of community on advocating real life movement. I want to ask Heesoo how her virtual community facilitate the discussion in the real world. And the other question will be from Amia. I'm curious about how the different panelists approach ancestor. TT seems to be talking about queer ancestor in a wider, less specific way, while Heesoo seems to be addressing her own family or lineage. So it would be great for TT and Heesoo to share about how you think about lineage, family, heritage, and also the digital divide, or not necessarily divide, about virtual and real life community in general.
I think I can start from the first question. Yeah, thank you for the question. And yeah, I have virtual communities, but it's not like I know, how can I say, the community is based on intimate interaction with me. Actually, it's not like some random people. There might be some audience or some viewers who saw my work in some online exhibition or some like different route, but my understanding about the Lay Muslim community is like we know each other. Yeah, the people whom I interact with, like even though like virtually, like for example, like when I first started the communal activities in 2019, it was mostly in person and like very intimate interaction, like almost seeing every day. I had a studio on UC Berkeley campus, and I used the studio as my church, Lay Muslim church, and people just came and we just hung out and like have some workshop together or like talk about life together. It was part of Lay Muslim practice. But since the COVID happened, like I couldn't keep that interaction with the members, and many of them went back to their country, like Asia or other their home countries. So it was like, and during the COVID, many people contacted me a lot, like through Instagram or email, saying like they saw my work and they feel so much related to my work. So we started to talk like having some phone call or Zoom, and like, yeah. So yeah, for me, like the virtual community is still like really deeply rooted in the interaction, and I value the process of learning about them a lot. And because it's autobiographical feminist religion, I'm interested in the converters or like the practitioners' lives and their family history. So and I believe the autobiographical stories reflect the it's the best way to understand the real world and the history. So that's how I'm understanding my communal activities are reflecting the real world, and we're discussing about the things in the real world. And about the ancestor part, actually, yeah, I'm about the personal ritual part, I'm addressing about my own family and especially my female ancestors mostly, because I felt like I'm pretty sure it's similar in the US, because many female change their family name after they got married, you know. But in Korea, even though they don't change the family name, but once they get married, like female get married, like they're kind of excluded from the original family, and the new married family, like they're considered like less important, like because they're female and they're like outsider. So that I faced that kind of cases a lot when I really tried hard to learn about my family and female ancestors' lives. I went to the community and wanted to find some records about them, but like everyone, like all the communities are like, oh, she got married, so she's not in this family tree anymore, and like and they kind of sacrificed their whole life for family. So without some personal achievement or like personal lives, it's all about like the family. So I wanted to highlight my female ancestors, and I wanted to record their lives, and even small stories I wanted to make record and keep it and share it. That's part of that's one of the goal in Leung. And and as not only about my family, I'm really interested in learning about other people's family and ancestors too. Like that's one of the biggest inspiration, and that's how I understand about the past and present too.
So in terms of the way that I'm thinking about queer ancestors, I think the thing that struck me most when I was looking at Jiro Anuma's archival collection, I mean, he had a lot of amazing photos of his vibrant queer life in San Francisco in the 20s and 30s, and he had a lot of gay kitsch, or these, homoerotic imagery, but he had 2 or 3 photographs that were actually taken when he was incarcerated during World War II. And, I'm 4th generation Japanese American, so my parents and grandparents were also incarcerated during the war. And it sort of struck me like a bolt of lightning, because I've taught Asian American history and queer history through the visual arts, but I had never really thought of adult queer folks in the camps and what their experience might have been like. And so that was just this kind of revelation, this light bulb that went off. And I actually thought of someone like Jiro as sharing space with my grandparents. So in that way, I was thinking of him as like, oh, he's the gay uncle that I never had, or he's like the gay uncle that I want to hang out with, or I want to be like. And then also, I think it was so pleasurable to perform in his character, or to create a fantasy that I was hoping was something that he would want to be involved in. That felt more personally fulfilling than some of my previous work, where I was embodying more kind of toxic stereotypes of Asian femininity and pushing back against them. But I think with the Jiro project, it really moved me towards working on subjects, queer, Asian, and Asian American subjects, who I actually admire or want to feel connected to, rather than want to criticize. So thank you for that question.
Thank you, Heesoo. Thank you, TT. Yeah, I think it's time to wrap up. So first of all, I would like to thank all the panelists, TT, Heesoo, and Madeleine, and Hoy, and Denise, for your input in this seminar. So please don't go. I have 2 information to share. Let me do this. So first of all, I just mentioned there's this art history seminar series on Zoom as well, Queer Chinese Feminist Archipelago of Shanghai, Miami, and San Francisco. That is actually a case study of the women exhibition back in 2011 by Alpesh Patel. So it's on Zoom. Check it out if you would like to know more about Abby's project and the women exhibition, the history of it. So that's A. And B, that's for Denise. Yeah. So apart from art history, there's also this Rethinking Sociological Theory in Asia, a panel on gender and sexuality with Stevie Jackson, Petula Ho, Travis Kong, Denise, and also Wu Chai Ling. So just a bit of, is it on Zoom? I think so, yeah. So it's on the same day, but in the evening. So if you want to max out your attention on queerness on the 31st of March, go for it. Yeah. So that's two information that I would like to share. Before we go, I would like to thank all the women working, supporting the artist talk and also the exhibition, including Jenny, YY, Jane, and Abby from CCCSF, Agatha, Chloe, Luna, Hey, Claudia, and also Frank from WMA Space. Our next event, Artist Talk number 2, will be on queer desire and sensitivity. It will be scheduled in early April. The exhibition at WMA Space is now on virtual platform. In-person visit will be open upon the HKSAR government measure on social distancing. So stay tuned on our social media. That will be lots of update in April. We are also aiming at creating a wider dialogue in our future program in and out of Hong Kong with our friends and collaborators. So if there are any suggestion, connection, network, feel free to let us know. I hope there will be another time, in person or virtually, for all of us to get together and generate more meaningful discussion in the future. So thank you very much. Thank you.